Aubrey, thank you so much for jumping on here today. It's always fun doing these, and I learn a little bit more about technology. You kind of have the coolest microphone I've ever seen. So hopefully next time I won't have these cords and I'll be updated like you. But excited to chat today. I think you bring a lot to our audience and to our alumni base, and going to educate us a good deal, but then also tell us a fun story about yourself. So as we always do when we start, for those who don't know you, please introduce yourself to our 1911 group audience.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Mitch. Appreciate you having me on. So Aubrey Boswell, I'm the managing attorney and founder of Boswell PLLC, which is a law firm in Dallas that focuses on what we like to say is legacy planning. So estate planning, probate, wills, trusts, all that area. So,
and we were saying before, I think everyone's heard the term trusts and estates, and we associate it with, the ultra high net worth, the crazy famous and wealthy people. But we'll get into it today. It's not just for those folks, and you're going to help educate us about when it is the right time. But before we get to, someone who owns their own law firm, there was the origin story of you at SMU. So you're a DFW guy. Tell us a little bit about stepping back in time. What was your decision process? What did you like about SMU? What made you want to stay local and go to SMU for undergrad?
Yeah, great. So I do kind of have to step a good ways back in time. I graduated undergrad in 2006 and graduated law school from SMU in 2009. So I did both undergrad at SMU and law school at SMU. Had a great experience in undergrad. So I was like, let's do it again for law school. And so undergrad was a great experience. And what kind of led me to SMU was knowing a few other people that had gone that route. And I don't have, my beginnings are kind of humble. My mom's a school teacher. My dad was a repair technician. And so didn't have, it was just kind of a modest beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And no one in my family had gone to SMU. But I had friends that went, and it just seemed really exciting. And I was like, I want to go that path. It's close to home. Grew up in Midlothian, which is like 45 minutes south of Dallas, and seemed like a great place to go. And before I went to SMU, I actually went to a community college for a year and transferred into SMU. And by doing that, that actually allowed me to qualify for a transfer scholarship due to my academics and my grades at that point. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at the time. I looked to my parents. I was like, hey, what's something I'm good at that you think the direction I should go? And they're like, well, you've always been good with numbers. Why don't you go get an accounting degree? And so that's the path I took when I went to undergrad. So I went to Cox School of Business, had just a really fun experience, a great education. Like I said, graduated, and I can get into what led me to go to law school as well. But
no, I love the idea of, and as we do this, I'm always kind of asking, what led you to take the courses or the majors you have? Some people know of SMU as a business school, and they're like, I just knew I wanted to get into the business school, go from there. I'm really interested in asking your parents, hey, what am I good at? What do you think I should focus on? I think that's a really smart strategy. What were you surprised when they said, hey, accounting might be a good profession for you? Did you consider yourself maybe, I want to be more entrepreneurial, I want to do something else, but then you trusted kind of your parents' guidance of knowing the son and the student they've raised over the past 18 years?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I kind of looking back at that, I had no idea like what accountants did, what CPAs did. It was kind of my experience, even with law school, about knowing what all lawyers did.
Mm-hmm.
My experience with CPAs was, if you're driving down the highway and you see a CPA sign, that's probably what they do. They all do tax returns, and they all do April 15th stuff.
Right.
And so that's all I knew that they did. So I was like, okay, I could go to school and I'll learn how to do tax returns. And that's what I'll do the rest of my life. But going and doing accounting, just like law school, it was very eye-opening. So once you step foot in the door and you start learning about how businesses work, and you start kind of seeing a bigger picture. It really was kind of eye-opening, and it was kind of broadened my horizons of like what accountants are in all facets of life. A lot of them end up in a C-suite type
Totally.
position.
Yeah.
And of course, you can do tax returns as well. You can go work for a big accounting firm.
Right.
There's so many career paths. And I think going to SMU really opened my mind to that. And I don't think really when my parents said, hey, go the accounting direction, I don't think they even knew
Right.
because I didn't have that background, and I don't think they understood
Yeah.
all of what it entailed. And so I think it was eye opening to all of us, but I did know that even since like the youngest age I can remember, I always loved math. I was one of those
Mhm.
people in like third grade who like you're learning about multiplication and stuff. And I'm like always wanting to be that person who like finished the math problem first. And so when they said that, it made sense like, oh, that's a
Mhm.
numbers
Right.
based path. So it made sense to kind of go and try it out and check it out.
Totally. And a lot of the purpose of these conversations is we were all there. We all go to school thinking one thing about the world. And then, the whole purpose of college is to open your eyes and
Yeah.
pull back the curtain and kind of show you what's out there. And so, you go to Cox School thinking, all right, I'm going to be a tax professional, get my CPA. Parents know it's going to be a secure job. There's a job market for you. But as we know, Cox probably widened your horizons on what a s an accounting degree can get you, right? Does it mean I'm gonna go work for a independent company, a large, corporation and work my way up the corporate ladder? How did you start to think about things to where you were like, "Okay, what can I do with this degree?" And then ultimately what clicked to say, "Okay, now I wanna tag on a law degree with this." And then how did you see that creating a bigger map for you potentially post school, within equipping yourself again, the sacrifice of going to school for, what is it, 3 more years outside of undergrad, like, kinda what was that, mental process for you?
So what that kind of looked like, so when I graduated in 2006, the job market was phenomenal. I mean, it was on fire at that point. When I was graduating, it was kind of a high point economically
Mhm.
in our country. And SMU Cox did a tremendous job of pairing students with potential employers. I mean, they hosted career fairs and job fairs and did just this tremendous job. So I think pretty much everyone from our graduating class had, it seemed like a job lined up once they graduated.
Mhm.
So I had an offer with a major accounting firm at that time, but something was just pulling on me to want to apply to law school and to
Mm.
kind of go that direction. So I was actually a late applicant to law school. Kind of made that decision late in my senior year of undergrad.
And what
And
was it about law school that kinda was that tug on you? Was it kind of that, "Hey, this notch on the belt, this is kinda cool to say I was the first in my family to go to law school," type thing? Or was it, did you have peers that were doing it that you were like, "Hey, maybe I'd be good at that?"
yeah, great question. As I try to think back about what that thought process was like, because I think it was just initially kind of this like just kind of the mystique of being a lawyer.
Yeah.
Again, my impression of what lawyers did at that time was that they're all in a courtroom, they're all
Mhm.
doing,
Mhm.
prosecuting or they're
Yep.
defending or, I didn't have this broader view. And, I was coming at it from an angle of the business side of things with my undergrad. And I didn't know exactly how that would look, but I was like, well, if all they do is prosecute cases, maybe I'll do some kind of like white collar crime type stuff,
Mhm. Mhm.
because back in '02 and '01, there was this, the major, Enron
Right.
scandal that
Right.
happened. And so that was big. And, kind of the era that I grew up in was like Enron. And then we had Sarbanes Oxley. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll go this white collar crime route.
Right.
And I think I wasn't sure what it would look like, but something just kind of was pulling on me to maybe I wanted a little bit more. And if I got into law school, it didn't work out, I would go back to
Had a
the
job, you had
the
a
accounting
skill.
route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what did this is I always like to kind of pause and ask, like, all right, you had the experience of, like, going through the accounting route and going to a big firm there, but then also the experience of ultimately making the decision to go to law school, what kind of, doesn't have to be the ultimate advice or like kind of the help them make a decision, but like, how do you weigh the two? Those people, so many people in law school, either, you hear the stories like the job market wasn't really good. So I wanted, law school is something that was always interesting me, or the people who knew they wanted to be a lawyer. Kind of what are the benefits you see of those who are on the fence about why you should go to law school, if it's on
Yeah,
the option?
that is a great question. I think for anyone going into law school is like get in touch with like the why you want to be there.
Mhm.
Because one thing they did to us, like once we got in, is they're like, look to your left and your right, because one of those people is probably not going to be graduating with you,
Mm.
because the attrition rate is so high because law school is so demanding. It's so intense, and a lot of people don't realize that. I did really well in undergrad, and I was like, man, I'm going to knock law school out of the park. I'm going to go in and just kill it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you go to law school, probably any graduate school, is like you're there with all these people that probably graduated at the top of
Right.
their
High
class as well.
achievers. Yeah.
High achievers, yeah. So my high achievement on undergrad was kind of average, because you're among all of these other high achievers. So, you have to be the best of the best of the best
Mhm.
to, be a high achiever in law school, even though you're, giving it everything you've got.
Right.
And so, being in touch with my why, I think throughout that first year, because the first year in law school is by far the hardest
Mhm.
year. And, kind of being there was like continually trying to be in touch with what did I want out of this? And I was processing so much at the time too of like, hey, we don't just all graduate and do traffic tickets or,
Yeah.
things of what I thought lawyers did,
Right.
that there's more to it. And it was just fascinating to me kind of going through and learning about all the aspects of law. And one of the other things that's unique, just, as a employer of lawyers now at this point in my career,
Mhm.
is, just kind of seeing, lawyers kind of grow into that same mindset and that same transition of, law school really develops your thinking patterns. It
Yeah.
really develops like how you view and question, and it's all based on the Socratic method. And so you're examining something and pulling it apart, which, so law school I learned is more about teaching you how to think and
Mhm.
process and identify issues, rather than saying, hey, we're going to give you this book, memorize it, and then when you come out and take the bar exam, you're just going to regurgitate this book. And so that was just fascinating to me, that kept me kind of glued in and locked in when I was in law school. Now, it still didn't prepare me for what I was going to be doing as a
Yeah.
lawyer later,
Yeah.
in terms of like, because I didn't know, I was still finding out and still
Yeah.
trying to figure, how does this apply in the real world?
Right. And, I think you probably have plenty of peers who you work with or in the business world who did go to law school, maybe don't practice law. And obviously law school isn't for everyone. Everyone has a different time frame, or, there's costs associated that they can't do. But yeah, the people who I've met who've gone through law school, they do have such a unique and valuable thought process, right? That I think applies to even if you're a litigator, to an ex-attorney who never, practiced for a couple years, but then went in-house and does business. So yeah, I think those who are able and it works out where law school can be a part of their journey, it's an awesome thing to experience. So you mentioned white collar crime seems like a good route for you. First year of law school is really tough. Maybe you weren't totally prepared for that, but you obviously survived. You got through it. Fast forward us to the end of law school. What does the job prospect look like? What are you kind of thinking you're going to get yourself into? And does any of that accounting background still pull at you, in terms of more of a business mindset in a career?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of fast forwarding of where I ended up, pretty much my entire legal career has been in the estate planning world. Quickly out of law school, I found myself doing estate planning work. If you told me in law school, I say this to everyone, if you told me in law school I'd be doing estate planning later, I don't know that I would have continued, because my why of being there was was not seeing myself as doing wills when I
Mhm.
graduated. I saw that
Mhm.
as kind of like kind of boring. Who wants to think about death and dying and wills and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff? It did not sound interesting at all. But then, sort of as I got to the end of law school, the 3 years, I started to do some internships and started to learn like how does this apply in the real world, my legal education. And then at that time, so kind of getting back to the economic picture, 2006, the economy was on fire. In 2009, it was a totally different picture in the market because we had the 2008 crash, and then 2009 it just carried forward. And so it was an interesting time. We had major law firms rescinding their offers from people that they had extended, and so it was, what's going to happen? Are we going to have jobs coming out of here? And so it's totally different from the 3 years before. We're at a job offer in hand. I could go, step into this role the next day versus, hey, you may not have a job when you graduate.
Mhm.
And so that actually led me, my first job out of law school was to get back in touch with my accounting roots. I went to work for an accounting firm.
Right.
And that's when I learned accounting firms are always hiring. They like the economy's up, hiring, economy's down, they're hiring because people always have to do taxes. They
You're
always have
right.
to do all the things that go on with financials. So I went to work for an accounting firm, and it was an interesting time because I was making less my first year out of law school than my job offer 3 years before
Ooh.
in 2006. And so I was doing the thing of like, well, was this a good decision to go to law school? And it led me to my first job, my first legal job, about a year later after law school.
Did you
I moved
potentially
over.
think you might not ever go back to law, or was it like you knew going into that first job, "Hey, this is a stopgap. I'm gonna do this until the legal market picks back up because I am gonna make my law degree my profession"?
Yeah, I think I did view it as a stopgap. Like this, at some point, it's going to come back around because I was still applying to different firms. And just to tie it in with SMU, I mean, I was sending applications to, I basically got on the internet and looked at, you know, anyone that had graduated from SMU Law School
Mhm.
or SMU undergrad. And then if they had an accounting background as well, I was like, double down on this one. We're going to send a resume to this person. And I wasn't sending it to just their recruiter, I was sending it to the partners.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I'm going to flood you guys to really show my interests. Like, I want to be, part of your team. My first law job was actually got a response from an SMU alumni, accounting background. He said, come in. Hey, I'd love to meet you. You have some great credentials. I don't have anything available right now.
Mhm.
We're a boutique firm. We don't have anything available, but I'd just love to meet you. I can put you in touch with my network. So I came in, I wore like a button down, but I wasn't expecting like an interview. So I was
Mhm.
just like,
Mhm.
come in, just kind of a little bit more casual.
Yeah.
Go in and I leave, and then like 30 minutes later, I get a call, and he's like, Aubrey, I loved you. I'm going to make a position for you.
Wow.
I say that because it was one of these things where you don't always know when that door will open,
Mhm.
and just to kind of be persistent and keep pushing. And that was with an estate planning
Yeah.
firm. But my real interest was like, hey, we also do a little bit of small business work.
Yeah.
And so I can utilize my accounting background to
Mhm.
kind of work with small businesses and help get them started and formed and all this. Doing that kind of, started doing a lot more estate
Yeah.
planning
Got you in the
and,
game.
and that kind of stuff. It did. Yeah.
Um, and I wanna get kind of into that part of the career, but you brought up something that I always think about, and Lindsay and I talk about with her legal background. It's the business development side and kind of the hiring side of the legal profession. I think you being now an employer, but going through it yourself, like, talk about either what's broken in that model or, like, how people navigate that, right? Because from my perspective, it's you go to law school, it's very competitive with your cohort. You might have a couple friends that you study with, but for the most part, you're, like, kinda competing for rank, right? And it's
Yeah.
so intense that you're studying. You're not like when we're in grad school, you're incentivized to go have coffee with every SMU alum you can and build that network. You guys don't really have the time to do that when you're in law school. And then if you're fortunate enough to get that job, and it sounds like in law school, you kind of have to nowadays, you have to pick your internship after the first year and it's kind of all set for you and you're not a lot of flexibility. But then you do get that job and it's head down work for the next 8 to 10 years. And if you're, survive that, you can lift your head up and kind of start to visit with your peers again. I'm sure I'm misspeaking on a bunch there, but kind of how do you think about how lawyers are able to kind of work on their networking while at the same time adhering to the strict and hard work hours that's required?
I love that question because it's so accurate in terms of the law school experience, which you're 100% right. Your head's down, but yet at the same time, it's like, well, you kind of had in a lot of ways have to have your mind made up, like from day one, like what you're going to be doing. When you come in and you're like, well, I don't even know what lawyers do. So how am I supposed to decide? Like, do I want to
Right.
do litigation, transactional, or this and that? And then on top of that, I've got, 5 different books. There's no pictures in any of these. There's no charts. There's no graphs like there were in business school. It's all just 100% text. And you've
Right.
now got to read that and be ready. And it's a rigorous experience. I think because my undergrad in business school, we had kind of been taught like, hey, where's this leading to long term? So I kind of had this ear up to, I need to be focused on where this is going to be when I graduate. I need to, and so that kind of kept me attuned to like knowing that I'm going to have to turn this into a job. Like, what's the practicality of this? I understand Socratic method. Like, I get we need to know that. And I'm going to learn it,
Hmm.
but I also need to know my career path. I see
Right.
it as being more practical and like I want to use this. I think law students need to be aware of that as they're going in, to be constantly kind of thinking about, how's this going to play into my future and kind of figuring that out at the same time. It's a
Hmm.
lot to do together, but doing that at the same time is going to set you up best later for when you are needing a job and you're going to need to turn this into a career.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that like no silver bullet or magic solution, right? It's time
Yeah.
management. It's trying to figure out, like you say, have a little bit of foresight and hopefully some good mentors and peers. But
Yeah.
so back to you and kind of building out your estate planning, legacy planning career. You get this first job. Explain this a little bit, kind of where lawyers sit in the legacy planning process, right? I think probably most people have a story or some familiarity with wills or whatever with grandparents or somebody, and they kind of see the end result. How did estate planning and lawyers become so synonymous in kind of that industry? If you can kind of touch on that for us.
Yeah. So I guess really, about 4.5 years ago, I started our firm here in Dallas. We've got 7 lawyers that do estate planning. And really, we kind of refer to it now as legacy planning, as this bigger picture kind of thing. Because, and the thing is, we have clients that come to us all the time that are, have these massive estates and they're like, I just need a will. Because
Hmm.
everyone knows, like, hey, at some point, I may have an expiration point. I need to
Hmm.
get something in place. And then we're able to really work with them to show, well, actually, you probably need a little bit more than a will. You might need a trust. You might need, because you're leaving your estate to your spouse, your kids, charities, all these different things. And how can we implement a plan that really leaves a legacy, like a meaningful, purpose driven legacy long after you're gone?
Hmm.
And that to me resonated a lot deeper and connected a lot deeper than just, hey, we're going to put together just kind of a simple,
Right.
5-page will for you that didn't require that much work. Like, we want to put together something that is really kind of comprehensive. And that was kind of a transition for me in my career a little bit in the estate planning world, to really dig deeper, because being a numbers person, I had always kind of focused on how can we leave the most money with the least amount of taxes to the next generation. As I kind of looked at it more, really what a lot of clients want, they want that, and we still do that, but they also want something that's going to be meaningful to their kids, like that's going to encourage them, because there's a lot of founders, a lot of business owners that got their start grinding it,
Right.
doing the grind.
Right.
And that hustle and the grind shaped them into, ultimately founding their company or starting their business and being successful. And so we really try to focus on, with our clients of shaping their estate plan or their legacy plan to be something that's going to set their next generation up for success and not just, you know, a bunch of money that's not going to incentivize or encourage them to go on and be successful themselves.
Right.
And so that was what really resonated with me, that, hey, that's what I want my firm to look like. We're not just pushing documents, but we also, our biggest, I think, selling point is that we're working on this bigger picture with our
Mhm.
clients.
Mhm. And is it for this industry, it feels like, an outsider probably misquoted here, but it seems like this industry has gotten bigger and bigger. Is it because of the large amount of wealth accumulated by individuals over the past 100 years that's was bigger than times past? Has the kind of legalities of estate planning and inheritance become so, uh, such a growing topic that it's required more oversight and more professionals such as yourself, or a little bit of the both, or something I'm not seeing?
Yeah, I kind of think of those things myself of, what's kind of created some of the dynamics that we see today, which I really think there are more trusts in place today than there's ever been. And part of that is because, at least my thinking is that over the last 100 years, more people have done estate planning and they've done the creation of trusts that have passed on more wealth to generations that are around today.
Mhm.
And I think that's only going to continue. Obviously, you know, about the wealth transition that's happening, and some of that's just demographics, but all that wealth has to go somewhere. And, people, I think, over the last 50 to 100 years have just been a little bit more thoughtful in creating trust vehicles
Mm.
that don't just leave it outright. Because before that time, I think there were still, people obviously still died and then left
Mhm.
money to the next generation, but
Mhm.
they either weren't doing an estate plan or they did, but it was just this simple will that just like left everything outright to the kids.
Right.
And then, who knows how it's going to be used. I mean, there's this story about all of these, incredible wealth generators in the past that, some of these very well-known names
Mhm.
like Vanderbilt, their money is completely gone. There's not a single Vanderbilt today that has significant wealth that they didn't generate themselves, that they got through an inheritance, because all the
Mm.
inherited money is evaporated now. It's all
Right.
been spent. I think that's led to a little bit more people having trust vehicles. And then obviously, so if someone comes to us and they've already got existing inherited money, we try to fold that into their overall plan.
Yeah. So, couple rapid fire questions as we kind of wrap up here. What age did someone start thinking about their legacy planning or kind of estate planning?
Really, once you get married and have kids, I think you've got to have something in place, even if it's just very basic.
Okay. And then what about in terms of net worth or kind of accumulated wealth, or kind of where they want to go? How do they think about that?
Yeah. So even if they've got a very small estate, let's say they're just starting out, I think, like I said, if you're married and you've got no kids or kids, once you start kind of that marital path, you've got to have some kind of estate plan in place, even if your overall net worth is pretty small at that point,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
chances are it's going to grow. And most people that put an estate plan in place, they take it and they put it on a shelf somewhere and they don't think about it again for another 10 years. And over that 10-year lifespan, they've amassed more wealth, they've had more kids, and so their life has changed dramatically. And so you've got to be very thoughtful 10 years in advance when you're putting that estate plan in place, because you're going to grow that estate. And of course, we hope that you'll update it throughout that 10 years, but for a
Mhm.
lot of people, they just put it on the shelf. So you kind of have to be mindful way ahead of time of what your life could look like 10 years later.
And do you all work with clients of all sizes, or is there kind of a minimum threshold for to be clients of y'all's?
Yeah, all sizes on our end. Where we can provide a lot of value is if a client has a higher net worth or complexity to their estate. High net worth for us is really 1 million in assets and above. We can work with people at all levels.
Mhm.
Um, Even from just what we call kind of your core estate plan, your basic documents, all the way to something very sophisticated that has taxes. As a person, grows in their estate, our firm is able to scale with them, but they don't have to be at that super high level in order to work with us. And so we're able to meet people at all throughout their stages of life.
And is the estate planning process greatly different for those who are W-2 kind of income producing families versus those who are maybe founders or have a lot of their net worth tied up to their like startup or their businesses they've created?
Great question. There are probably different questions or things that have to be worked through for someone that is a founder or a business owner because their business, it may have partners, it may have, of course, we want continuity of value. We probably need a succession plan for it. So we do what's also what we call business succession planning, which I refer to that really as just an estate plan for your business. And so there are a few other questions that we need to work through. That way, the founder doesn't die, and then the value of the business just completely evaporates because there wasn't any continuity plan in place to ensure that the value stays there.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Aubrey, I've taken a lot of your time. I know you've got clients to go with. This has been fun. Thank you for educating us and telling us a great story about yourself and the formation of Boswell PLLC. Really excited to have you a part of this 1911 community and SMU alumni network. So thank you for your time and excited to visit with you some more.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate you letting me be on here.
Thank you to our sponsors, Sewell Buick GMC, Agility Holdings Group, Probity Advisors, Sound of a Rose, Hilltop Property Tax, Security National Bank of Texas, Boyd, Shackelford, Barnett, and Dixon, Bigham Agency, Life After Ball, SMU Cox School of Business, and Mignon Steakhouse.